This is the 19th century. A pivotal, tumultuous age that witnessed revolutions in industry, technology and politics. But also, crucially, in ideas. Big, bold, dangerous ideas that would bring the world as we know it kicking and screaming into being. Three great thinkers led the way: Karl Marx, Friedrich Nietzsche and Sigmund Freud. They lived in a time when old certainties were breaking down. Regimes were overthrown by mass uprisings. Science was undermining religious authority. Their challenge was to figure out what makes us human in a fast-evolving world. Émigrés, recluses, enemies of the state, these outsiders challenged the existential crisis of their age head-on. Little was out of bounds. They had an absolute commitment to identify the forces controlling our lives. Their weapon, the power of their minds. Their search drove them to extremes, into poverty, into madness. Yet their penetrating, often contentious ways of seeing the world still shape how we make sense of our lives today. Of all the great historical figures buried in Highgate Cemetery, there's one who continues to divide opinion like no other. For those who come here year in, year out to mark the day of his death, Karl Marx is a keenly intelligent analyst of capitalism, a prophet of human emancipation. But for others who've actually attacked this monument with paint, with hacksaws, even with explosives, he's a malign progenitor of totalitarian regimes, a man responsible for the death of millions. Love him or loathe him, what you cannot dispute is that Karl Marx dramatically transformed our world. Within 70 years of his death, 1/3 of the world's population was ruled by governments claiming Marxism as their doctrine. Marxist ideology claimed to be liberating, but led to dreadful suffering and brought superpowers to the brink of Armageddon.
Shall be the policy of this nation to regard any nuclear missile launched from Cuba as an attack by the Soviet Union on the United States.
Communism was widely discredited, precipitating its fall in the 1980s and 90s. But economic crisis and social unrest have put Marx's ideas back in the spotlight. I want to start at the beginning, not to study Marx with the hindsight of history, but to try to understand what motivated him in the context of his own times. To discover how a man whose life was plagued with insecurities, with failure, with tragedy, would end up generating one of the most influential ideologies in the human experience. We tend to think of Marx as a rather imposing greybeard figure, staring out sternly from Soviet propaganda. But this early image of the young Marx, dashing, dapper, privileged, offers a rather different story. His birthplace, Trier, was an elegant Rhineland town, now part of modern Germany. Born in 1818 to upwardly mobile parents in this handsome building, Marx's childhood was, on the face of it, pretty idyllic, and thoroughly bourgeois.
But one day, when Marx was just 15, his father Heinrich met with a group of respected public figures here at Trier's Casino Club. After too much to drink, some of them began pounding the tables raucously and singing songs that celebrated the virtues of the great revolution that swept through neighbouring France.
A Prussian army officer witnessed the scene and reported back.
Two of Marx's school teachers, who were also in the room, were promptly sacked. Others were charged with subversion, and Marx's father was tarnished with the disgrace. The casino was put under surveillance.
Because under the surface calm of the town, there was tension. Not long before Karl's birth, Trier had been under Napoleonic control, which meant that people like Karl's father had got a taste of the French revolutionary principles of individual liberty and equality.
Under French law, Heinrich had been free to train as a lawyer, but he was Jewish, and once the more autocratic Prussians were in control, they imposed civil restrictions on all Jews. Now, in order to keep practicing his profession, he had to convert to Christianity.
Marx was growing up in a period when questions of political authority and freedom of expression were highly contested, when ruling classes across Europe feared their people would rise up and overthrow them. The struggle between the ideals of the French Revolution and the intractable conservatism of the Prussian state would inspire and motivate Marx. And from an early age, it was pretty clear where his allegiance lay. When he was 17, Marx was packed off down the Moselle River to study law at Bonn University.
There was clearly something of the hellraiser about the teenage Marx. He quickly became co-president of the Trier Tavern Club, basically a bunch of middle-class bad boys.
After one night of boozy brawling, Marx was banged up in the local cells for a day. But there was more to come.
Student life was divided along class and political lines to the point of conflict. The liberal Trier Tavern boys attracted the attention of a gang of aristocratic cadets. Now, those cadets forced them to kneel down and swear their allegiance to the Prussian aristocracy. And the confrontations escalated. At one point, Marx ended up in a duel with a sabre wound above his eye, a scar which this young scrapper wore as a badge of honour.
Enough, it seems, was enough for Marx's father. Heinrich transferred Karl to the more studious environment of Berlin University. Yet, even here, Marx found other distractions. Marx met a group of bohemian students and lecturers who loved to discuss the philosophies of the day late into the night. He grew a beard and joined the Young Hegelians, a group obsessed with the theories of a university professor who'd recently died, George Hegel.
Marx describes his first encounter with Hegel as one of a completely extraordinary moment. He says that when he read Hegel, it was like the curtain had fallen from his eyes.
And what is it about Hegel? What's particularly exciting about his ideas?
Berlin is awash with Hegelian ideas, but perhaps the most important idea of Hegel's that they are completely captivated by is the idea of history as this gradual unfolding of freedom and of reason. And this gradual dialectic, as he called it, was made manifest most magnificently in the French Revolution, when, of course, you had a literal cracking open of freedom and of reason.
I suppose it is totally thrilling, this, isn't it? Because you're being told that you're part of a big historical story, and that gives you a big historical and philosophical canvas to paint on.
That's right, and I think that Marx does absolutely see himself as kind of standing, as it were, towards the end of history that had begun with the ancient philosophers who had talked about the way in which one's soul could only find perfection if it was properly embedded in the community.
And do they think that Hegel's got it absolutely right, or is there a sense that there's still work to do?
There's absolutely still work to do. So they think that while Hegel had got, in his vision, had got part of the way, that what they want to do is bring a total revolution rather than just reform. They were operating in a world where the nobility, the privileged, the aristocracy were still very much in charge, and they were pushing up against a great kind of wall of privilege and tradition.
Marx and the young Hegelians believed that the single greatest obstacle to human